Alrighty. It doesn't matter if it's exactly right, so I'll edit it just so I have a general idea. All right. See, video looks good?
Yeah. Well, it is me.
Perfect.
The lighting seems pretty even. It's all good.
Yeah, it's looks like it's working out.
Yep.
All right.
All right.
So, I want to be able, of course I made it so it's more visually blocking. Now we can see each other a little bit better. There we go. All right, so I want us just to start just by kind of like shooting shit, not even trying to do anything. I might do a random like, oh, this is Clayton Taylor, Dan Taylor, blah blah blah.
Sounds good.
We'll just cut out, a bunch of the front stuff. So
sure.
Mostly just getting comfortable in this format. There we go. Now I can see you a little bit better.
Great.
All right.
Great.
So, how you doing? How was your
I'm good. I just want to let you know what an honor it is to be the sole guest in your maiden voyage of your soon-to-be wildly successful podcast.
Oh yeah. I'd say we're co-hosting this bad boy. Yeah, because
you're very generous.
So we gotta co-host this bad boy, and then we gotta have other people come in and talk to both of us.
Okay. I hope we can maintain the relative level of preparation and work too, because I'm old and tired, as you know, and you have more spring in your step. So,
well, the nice thing is, I think that realistically, this should be kind of the work. You know what I mean? We're not gonna. I don't think that we're gonna have to really look up things other than that, because the kind of the whole concept is right. Like we're kind of tapping into what you got all up in your noggin through me asking questions and stuff. So
yeah, and I really love the idea of having guests from other preventive wellness areas or anything even peripherally related. There's so much wisdom and curiosity kind of swirling around right now, and more of us just need to talk to each other and get to know other sides of, a lot of our communities there's a ton of overlap in some cases. There's stuff that we can hear just as an aside, as part of a casual conversation. And I know I do that. I'll go to one yoga class and then I pick something up that I have all my clients do for the next 10 years.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, and on that note too, we've already got those people who hopefully will be interested in coming. Like, maybe I forget her name from Dragonfly. You've told me her name a bunch of times. And
Susanna Spring. She's quite comfortable with the microphone because she's a singer-songwriter.
Perfect.
And as well as being a lovely person, and very committed and passionate about yoga. And very open towards its integration with other disciplines. And
cool.
We've talked before about our personal philosophy. We just want to help, we want to provide something that's useful but not exclusive or dogmatic,
Nice.
Sort of the Bruce Lee, hey, take stuff in from other areas that work and make it your own, right?
How'd you like that? Did you see my Bruce Lee post?
No, was it the one with the? Oh no, go ahead.
Well, what I really wanted to do was the like Wada quote. I think it's from Enter the Dragon, the one where he says, be like water.
Yeah,
that's the one I wanted to do, but I used one that was I think it was along the lines of take what's useful, forget what's.
Oh yeah, no, I did see that. Yeah, that was a week or two ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
yeah, I was stoked to do that one. I think I did Eckhart Tolle one at some point too.
Nice,
if I remember correctly. But I figure, it's stuff like that is like right up not only our alley collectively as a organization, as Tri Valley Trainer, but as you personally and some of the stuff that you instilled in me growing up. Whether I was actively listening at the time or not,
right.
A lot of that stuff sunk in, and the stuff that, guides a lot of what I do today in my personal life and, professional.
Right. I think part of the reason it appeals to both of us, we've have conversations about this before, it's sort of this lifelong trial and error process of figuring out how to weave the heart and the head together so that they're not adversaries, so they actually synergistic partners in helping you to find the way that works for you and understand, how that triggers you. Feel more energetic, you feel more open, you just lean towards something kind of more naturally, and then you start to see the commonalities with other areas. The funny thing, you mentioned the Bruce Lee thing, because the first thing that popped into my head was there's a picture of let me give you a little bit of background. I'm a member of I think it's called Over 50 Fitness Enthusiasts, and it's a really interesting mix of, the community is a really interesting mix of people. There are people that are kind of new to it and are looking for encouragement and guidance, and then there are competitors, and there are people kind of in between, and there are, some people who you wouldn't necessarily hang out with, but for the most part, it's a really cool. And I think because we're older, less egocentric, kind of less insecure kind of community. And then every once in a while, somebody just posts something that's kind of from our time period and then has some sort of humorous aspect to it. But in the movie, for those of you who don't know, in the movie Enter the Dragon, he has one fight with this really thick, muscular guy who actually appeared in a few of his movies. His name was Bolo. And
a great name for that guy.
Yeah, like a junkyard dog. And kind of smooth, not like, right? And then, of course, Bruce Lee, who looks magnificent on screen because of his balance and his striations and all that stuff, but 130 pounds soaking wet, right? So it's showing a picture of the two of them standing next to each other, and so I guess just from just from a still from the filming or whatever, and it says, when your bro is bulking up and you're shredding, but you still hang out because you're homies.
Nice. Yeah,
so
that makes sense.
It's what I liked about that when you mentioned the Bruce Lee thing. What I liked about that was, fitness should be a welcoming community, and fitness should meet people where they are. A lot of times people are very intimidated about taking a foray into that whole arena and think they have to instantly become a particular idealized, template kind of thing. And you and I have talked about this a lot before. It's it's so important that people feel as though it's just about learning and growing and paying attention to how your body responds to what it's designed for, right? More movement, but then a reasonable kind of work, rest, balance trajectory. However, whatever lane that goes and in whatever steepness that incline has, or maybe it's an incline for a while and then maybe it's dropping back, or maybe I've had clients who really just started training because they knew they were going to have surgery in 3 months or something, and they felt like that was a good time because that would help with their post-surgery recovery. And either they stayed with it, mostly they do, but often not. But it should serve you. It should elevate you in a way that feels supportive and not sort of overwhelming and anxiety-provoking.
Absolutely. What a great segue into really why we're doing this to begin with, right? Fitness seems like such a mountain to climb, and I know that personally, and I know that that's something that I can relate to clients a lot of the times with, especially new clients who don't necessarily have any foundational skills or philosophies, and I feel like this podcast will be a great setting for kind of, you know, relieving that fear a little bit that a lot of people have, you know, because, you know, well, people think of trainers just to begin with as, you know, they're these Adonises who, you know, it's like, you know, everyone's a mini mold of, you know, Arnold or, you know, I mean, and Bruce Lee is another great example, although there are very few people who really model that very well, the Bruce Lee mold. But, you know, for me, especially coming into this, having grown up watching you do this, this is, I guess we didn't really give any background. This is Clayton Taylor, who I'm a trainer at Tri-Valley Trainer in Pleasanton, and I'm talking to my pop, who started the business back 22 years ago, right?
Very good.
Yeah. So I mean, I was just he was, you know, you were doing it out of the garage at that time, and so I mean, I was around it, you know, more than I think necessarily realized growing up. And I absorbed so much more, you know, than I realized, having now come full circle back around to doing it myself. And, you know, this mountain that people see can be taken in steps, right? And, you know, I feel like so far in my experience, that's been one of the most important things that I've brought to clients has been, you know, helping them to identify the real goal, which is not, you know, to get yacked, right? The real goal is not to get, you know, get that six pack in a week, right? It's to take little steps to start feeling good. And then that feeling good leads you to wanting to do it more. And when you want to do it more, you're more likely to make a habit of it.
Right.
And it's all these little bitties that we, you know, as people tend to look past, right? We lose no, I mean, that's not the same as losing the forest and the trees, but there's some connection there, right? It's like kind of a backwards compatibility version of that phrase where, you know, it's like, it's, you know, people are, I guess the opposite, right? Is people are looking at this forest and it's just all you got to do is get through a couple trees, right?
Right. Yeah. And I would say for some, it's just be careful not to walk directly into the tree in front of you, right? Like, find your way through the forest by being aware of the trees that are closest to you at this moment, right? That's the purpose they serve. And they're not there to trip you up.
Totally.
Right? They're there to provide a pathway that if you're patient and observant enough, they'll help you find your way into the forest, however far you want to go.
Nice. I love this forest metaphor.
I'm about out of the...
Yeah.
I'm not an outdoorsy guy. I'm a big fan of the great indoors myself. Especially if Netflix is involved.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I always tell people my favorite, you know, especially, again, with new clients, my favorite workout is TV squats, you know, which, of course, is just squats that you're doing while you're watching TV. But, you know, something about calling them TV squats, I feel like takes a little bit of that, you know, oomph out of it, right? It's like squats, TV squats, I can do that. You know?
I mean, almost everybody works out. Well, a good number of people work out to music. It's the same thing. Why not tie in something that you enjoy? It's not just the sound of the music and the beat and everything. People, they go to a different place when they're listening to music, and they're doing something that isn't really intellectually demanding. They feel connected to the music, and they feel brought more deeply into presence, right? So it's just it's really conducive to that process. So you know, some people just we're gonna get exercise, you know, but they have they've got a 3-acre property that they spend 6 hours on doing stuff around, you know, putting up split rail fences and digging trenches and stuff, and that's exactly what we're talking about, right? It's about pursuing mindfully the body's ability to gradually and to whatever degree is useful to you, exploit that capacity to perform at a higher level than before, and do it in a way that's that feels right, that fits. It doesn't have a set dogmatic kind of, recipe or structured blueprint per se.
I would love to actually put a little pause on that, because I want to talk about the practicality of what we're doing. But before we do that, we should just give a little background.
Should we?
Yeah, we're just a couple of yokels yokeling.
Guys, everybody knows us. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Just going out to our Facebook pages, so you guys all know us already.
Actually, yeah, that's true. I thought you were joking, but they really do.
No, I think we owe it to whomever out there isn't already obligated to watch and listen to us. Yeah,
well, and it'll be great to, I think it's important to highlight the fact that, we are family. This is Dan Taylor. I don't know if I said your name earlier. That's part of the reason why.
Did
I didn't. I just said my pop.
I always hear little bells in my head every time I hear my name, and it makes me a little warm and happy inside. So I didn't feel that. Now.
All right. Well, we'll ring the bell. Just give you a little insight into what we're doing here. This is Dan Taylor of Tri-Valley Trainer, and Clayton Taylor of Tri-Valley Trainer as well. We're a father-son pair of trainers, so I was thinking maybe we call this, just for working, the title is Tailored Fitness for trainers by trainers.
That's great. Do you mind if I plug my other thing?
Oh, please do. That's half the reason why we're here.
Okay. So I have an online program that I've collaborated with some other wellness professionals, notably a registered dietitian, Ann Moselle, who I've worked with for 12, 15 years now. And it's online, a 6-week program specifically for folks who are 50 plus. We say we straighten the path for the over 50 aspiring athlete. And that's because we're really more helpful to people who have already committed to the health wellness lifestyle. Not that we can't help you individually if you're not there, but that's kind of what the focus is for the program. So optwell50plus.com, and that's my last plug.
Well, I mean, I think it probably will naturally come back up as we're talking too, because I mean, a lot of the stuff we're talking about, this is one of the benefits I feel like of you and I presenting this podcast in this way, is that, I mean, we are naturally different demographics, right. Primarily age-wise, right? And we cater for the most part to our own demographic. I have much more to offer a 20-something who's trying to learn how to use their body, whereas, obviously that's something that you can and do, but it seems like, especially as you've gone over the years, like your tribe, your group of folks has become more and more specific to kind of this group that's looking really kind of for what you're talking about with Opwell 50 Plus, which is kind of like a masterclass, right? It's kind of a masterclass for people learning how to, use their body as it is. Right. And it happens to target this demographic of folks who are, are over 50, and because you have a different set of, you have a different body structure. You have a different.
Yeah, the body responds differently to different types of exercise as we get older, and there are differences even within that demographic. Somebody who hasn't worked out regularly, maybe since high school, has a really different response to a particular exercise program than somebody who's been largely continuous with their exercise for, 5 decades. And then, so to the broader issue that you were talking about, I've talked to other trainers about this, and it's certainly been the case for me. Over the years, while I have had a broad range of clients that I've worked with, and I'm grateful for that, the breadth of opportunity and variety, I think the longer that you do anything, especially if it's a kind of craft and you're, an individual business person and your focus is on how do I best serve my clients. What happens in this particular business, which is a little bit more personal than a lot of other personal service businesses, is that I think the trend is you start to attract peers because you just have more empathy and insight and awareness, and not just about the body, but priorities. It's different when the kids are off out of school, and it's different when a lot of people in my age range have they might be entrepreneurs or salespeople, and they have more flexible and chaotic schedules than some younger folk. Not always the case, but I see a lot of that. So, and then I think when people enter into this process, a lot of times they want a partner that feels like somebody who understands them and gets their concerns and their priorities and their obligations and restrictions and opportunities and all that. And then personality-wise too, you've already experienced that. You don't have to have the same type of personality, but the partnership, you have to have good chemistry, and that means trust and communication, and I think you have to have a pretty similar sense of discipline and commitment to the process, because really that's really the only way you can do the business long term, and it's really the only way that the partnership with the client is going to be productive and helpful in the long term. So
nice. Well, that makes a lot of sense. It also gives everybody a little idea of where we're coming from and where we're going. That being said, I do have a couple questions for you that I feel like will be a good kind of.
I didn't study.
This is the best part of this. Okay. It's all in your brain.
I gotta wing it.
Yeah, okay. You got it.
All right, I'll do my best.
So. We've kind of already, talked a little bit about this, but I want to hear. Tell me about your background. Tell me your story. Like, what did physical fitness mean to you growing up? Especially like as a young man, as opposed to, especially prior to making it your career, and then kind of how did that lead you into this profession and into something that would be your lifelong kind of calling? And were there any kind of influences in that growing up that really?
Well, as you know, I was born in a log cabin. Too far back? Okay, sorry. I wasn't born. It's funny, your mom, I'm
so sorry to interrupt you, but you just so reminded me of Grandpa Mac.
Oh.
I heard him so many, every
That's
time I saw him, yeah.
His paternal grandfather.
Yeah, he would say regularly, I think pretty much every time I saw him every single time I saw him, he would say, somehow he'd work in that he's older than dirt.
Yeah.
So that was the log cabin felt very
reminiscent.
Yeah. So apologies.
No, that's what we do. We riff. So I grew up in a middle-class family. Mom and dad were together the whole time that we were growing up, and my brother was a few years older than me, and although we were close in age, we didn't really have that much in common, but and I didn't consider myself much of an athlete. He was a multi-sport athlete in middle school and high school, so one more reason to be intimidated by your older brother, whose two best friends are the most athletic guy in high school and the best looking guy in high school, right? Really genuine, nice guys, but there was the whole, the A team of the high school as I was going into high school. But then we had a backyard pool, so I just started doing crazy things off the diving board. And then when I got into high school, I found out that was a sport, and so I did that for a few years, and I really enjoyed it. And nice thing for me is I was a smaller guy, and I matured more slowly than some of my friends. But you didn't have to be big and strong and fast with my body type, and I'm kind of a slender build guy. That was a good sport for my body type and kind of my orientation. And then I always loved to watch boxing with Grandpa Mac, or as I got older, whomever, friends, stuff, and pay-per-view fights and stuff. So I actually got into, when your mom and I first got married, first year of college, I just kind of stumbled across a combined pro-amateur gym that was halfway between where we lived and San Jose State University, which is where I went to school. And so I just kind of walked in there one day, and I didn't really have much. I'd done a little kind of quasi-boxing sparring stuff with a friend of mine who was a Kenpo karate instructor, who was very kind, and like in the self-defense community, there's a real like lookout for the other, the less skilled. And he was a good first impression of that. And it's the bigger, stronger / more skilled fighter when sparring, which is not full force contact, but just making light contact, but it can get pretty physical. The stronger and or more skilled fighter, it's his or her responsibility to protect the other one, sure. Right? So it was for somebody who was really passionate about boxing, it was a great introduction to it, knowing and Larry was a really good guy, and I always felt really safe with that. So I really didn't consider myself, I would have never like, I'm going to do a sport because I want to be athletic. I was more into music and art and drama and stuff like that. But sometimes your sport finds you, and it's not even necessarily about the sport thing. It's more about, this is something that I enjoy doing. Could be a musical instrument or, any kind of skill. But back to my brother, Steve, he was into the first wave of the bodybuilders, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Franco Columbu, the first Mr. Olympia, Frank Zane. And so he started lifting weights. And then when I got into high school and I started diving, the swimmers did weight circuits. I've never been so nauseated without having a bug. Just trying to get through those weight circuits. But I saw how it built the sense of discipline and the self-empowerment, right? I mean, these guys were like side by side in different body types and different strength levels, but they were all kind of in it together. We didn't know what the heck we were doing, right. With clunky old machines and stuff. But that's the thing. You don't need a lot of technology. It's helpful to have some frame of reference for the basics and good technique and all that. But anyway, just to kind of get to the other part of your question, you had several parts of it. I don't want to spend too much time on this. But I was a typical non-athlete who ended up sort of being an athlete by accident. But that helped me to appreciate the importance of conditioning, right. And how I don't think I was as focused on nutrition back then, because you just really didn't think about that. You just had the meat and potatoes and peas and all that kind of thing. But bodybuilders were really into it. So I kind of soaked that up from what Steve shared with me, my brother. Steve shared with me for that group. And then when I got really interested in boxing, that's when Michael Spinks fought Larry Holmes. These are pre-Tyson guys, but between Ali and Tyson, Michael Spinks fought Larry Holmes he jumped up like 30 pounds to go from light heavyweight to fight Larry Holmes. And he hired this guy named Mackie Shilstone, who was a nutritionist and personal trainer. And he hadn't really heard too much about that stuff. You'd heard cryptic bits about that kind of stuff, but it was always in relation to a Hollywood star or a professional athlete, right?
So I'm sorry, this is mid to late 70s.
So this is pretty close to 78, 80s, in that time frame, I think.
Okay.
I don't remember exactly, but right around there. But anyway, but for you for you data geeks, Michael Spinks fought his last defense of his. He was. I'm going a lot of detail. He was a skinny guy. He fought his last defense of the light heavyweight belt at 170 and a half.
Okay.
After 4 or 5 months of training, I think, and eating basically fish, poultry, vegetables, brown rice, fruit, nuts, and strength training, I think like 3-4 days a week. He came into the fight, so 170 and a half, a few months later, came into the fight against Larry Holmes at 199.
Jeez.
2 points lower body fat than he'd been at 170 and a half.
Wow. He must
And
be
he,
really
and he
big.
wasn't trying to be a bodybuilder.
Right.
He was just trying to get big enough so that he could be in the ring and manage what was going on with so much force and power coming at him and that sort of thing. Because he was a real cagey guy and rolled with the punches and everything. Anyway, the point is, that blew my mind because I'd never seen a connection, such a strong connection between a deliberate, planned approach that wasn't specifically about sports training
Right.
for an athletic performance. And he won. He ended up winning the fight by a small margin. But to see how his body changed and see how his movement pattern changed, and then after that, Evander Holyfield, most people who know anything about boxing, Evander Holyfield was like the whole new level of fitness, elevating somebody to a level, and he's a Hall of Famer. Evander Holyfield, who was a small guy for a heavyweight, fought guys 30, 40 pounds heavier than him.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
He'll go down as one of the top 20 heavyweights of all time. Good, skilled fighter, but in large part because of his conditioning. And he's my age, he's like late 50s. And I saw a YouTube video the other day of some boxing convention or something, and he's a little bit grayer, but he looks exactly the same. He's just one of those people who's committed to that lifestyle. So anyway, through first diving and then more boxing from me, sort of just as an indirect, I just got fascinated with fitness. And then apart from the bodybuilding thing, because I saw these gargantuan guys that I thought, I'll never be like, but I wasn't interested in that.
Right.
But I was fascinated by this whole work-rest ratio, repair, be able to do more kind of thing.
And that's pretty young. I didn't realize that so young you were interested in how changing what you do to your body can really change your body and for a purpose, right? That's really interesting to me. And I'd love to, if you don't mind, I'd love if you'd send me some of the fights you're talking about. I'd love to see Spinks. You said was
Michael Spinks. Yeah,
Michael Spinks. I'd love to see him in maybe like his last, that 170 and a half fight, and then watch the next fight. Because I mean, growing up, I remember watching all of Hagler, Hearns, Sugar Ray Leonard, all these guys. I think you even had me. We're pretty sure we watched an Ali fight or two at some point. But Spinks I'm not familiar with. I do remember watching Alexis Arguello. I'm not sure that's one.
So do you want to tell them what the tie-in with Alexis Arguello?
That is my namesake. My pop named me. I'm Clayton Alexis Taylor, and I'm named after
Alexis Arguello.
Alexis Arguello,
who is the three weight division champion from Managua, Nicaragua, and a real gentleman. He was just a total class act, real handsome guy, very kind, and the antithetical. He was like the anti-thug, just really classy, good guy. But just what I really liked about him, besides that stuff, was that back to kind of the performance stuff with training, where it helps you with everyday activities and sports and recreational activities. He was a really skinny guy, but he had a wicked right cross and left hook because he used perfect leverage to unleash the punches. And you can see, and I'll send you like a highlight reel from him. Same thing with Tommy Hearns. You mentioned Tommy Hearns. You mentioned Hearns. He was the most famous guy from a Detroit-based gym called Kronk Gym, and they turned out like a dozen world champions.
Wow.
A lot of people don't know that. But again, when you see somebody who can generate that kind of force and power with just shifting their weight and having a really keen sense of their center of gravity and leverage, and of course your opponent's moving relative to you, so you're moving, you got a moving target. To me, just the physics of all that stuff was just fascinating, just like a lot of people like to watch gymnastics at the Olympics for the same reasons. It's just somebody gets hit.
Right.
So,
It's a little extra.
It might not be your thing, or it might really be your thing.
Right. Well, and that's really interesting that this was the kind of the seminal moment in your development towards being somebody who really is that's at the core of what you teach, and I know because that's the core. It's at the core of what you taught me, and that I go on to teach, which is really this idea of what are we doing and why. We're not just getting in the gym just to throw some weights around, right? How can we make the most use of what we're doing in the studio, right? And it always comes back to me, and I use this scenario when I'm talking to clients or when I'm talking to friends about this type of stuff. It's like, what good is it having a big old upper body if you're not working your legs, right? And it's you see these memes like, not doing leg day, bro,
right.
but on such a more important and practical level, and I'm pretty sure this came from you at some point way back when, but like if you're out, your car dies and you need to push your car into, across the street into a parking lot, your upper body isn't going to do you any good getting you there because, your legs are what connects you to the ground and is what is going to be, not only are they your most powerful system of muscles, but they are going to be they're the things. You can't do much with your upper body if the part that connects it to the ground, your anchor, isn't strong enough to make it, make all the systems work together, right?
Yeah, and that's a good point. The systems that's a key word because just to bring both of those towards the center to where they meet. You will just intuitively in a situation like that, if you're trying to push something heavy that has a low mid level to low center of gravity, you will just naturally drop down and get leverage lining as much as you can your spine on the trajectory of the push, right? And so of course you'll do that more elegantly and more intuitively if you do work out on a regular basis and you do these sort of multiple plane lines of resistance kind of movement, and then you just develop a more sophisticated sense of exactly how to position yourself and exactly how to recruit all the muscles in tandem, and even to a degree how much force to apply for how long you think you're going to be engaged in the force application process. You're not necessarily verbalizing that in your head and calculating and all of it, but you just, the more varied your movement patterns are, the more varied your work intervals are, the more varied your intensity is, you just start to develop this sort of unspoken vocabulary internally about that. So.
Makes me think of you with the what are they called? Where you have somebody harness. We have somebody harness, and you're holding the
cummerbund of cruelty.
All your clients' favorite exercise.
They have a lot of favorites,
right? Where you're holding, the straps and that are connected to the harness, and the person has around their torso, and they're basically running with you, pulling. You're basically, applying resistance, right?
I'm helping.
You're helping, right? I mean that brings me to makes me kind of think about my beginning, my starting place with well, really my starting place with physical fitness was you teaching me stuff as as a prepubescent kid, and trying to write. I remember the moment where you're like, you could probably use some exertion, and God, were you right? But what it really, you're talking about kind of lowering your center of gravity and aligning your spine and all that. It takes me to like doing the sled, doing football. Sure. I played it's funny now that I never really thought about the fact that our starting points with athletics were kind of two opposite ends of the spectrum, right? Because diving, it's all about, kind of using your body to slide into the water gracefully, whereas my learning of my body and physicality was smashing into other people.
Right.
So I think I started in 5th grade, so I must have been 12 or so, 11 or 12. And I remember, doing that sled. What I really remember more is running circles at that first practice, laps. And
I remember that.
Yeah, I remember saying to my coach, Coach, I'm going to throw up. And he said, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, they didn't get rattled by that kind of stuff.
No, this was also the coach that had us say yes sir, no sir. Yeah, he was kind of a butt. Yeah, but I learned a lot of great lessons, and I'll tell you what, no coach was ever as challenging from let me rephrase. He was the most difficult coach that I ever played with over. What I played until I was a sophomore in high school. Yeah. So, of the years I played, I never, it was a great entry point, right? It was like it never,
if you made it past that one, you're in, right?
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, but you were saying, you've grown up with, kind of accidentally almost getting into diving, or maybe not, but, that not being necessarily something, Steve was the sports guy, right?
Yeah, I honestly didn't even really think of it. It wasn't my pathway to a varsity jacket, right? It was, I guess the boards were bigger and further off the water than what I was doing in the pool. And I thought, this could be fun. Now the 3 meter scared the crap out of me. So
just the regular low board and just like doing things off of the side of the pool scares the crap out of me. So I was definitely,
that's a healthy, reasonable fear.
Yeah. I think I got to the point where I could do a backflip off the side of the pool, but,
that's pretty great.
But I tell you, I still, like even thinking about it gives me a little fear in my chest about hitting the back of my head. So I don't know how how any divers really can do that. It's impressive to me.
So when you were a toddler, I took you to the pool at San Jose State, and I hadn't been on a board in like 11, 12 years. And you were old enough, I guess you weren't a toddler, you were old enough where you'd be okay, like by the side, and I could keep my eye on you. And I went and I hopped on the board, same, as a high school one, and I just froze up and my knees kind of trembled, and I think I did like a dive. I didn't do 1.5 somersault or reverse or anything. But yeah, it is quite literally a leap of faith, right? Because you're hitting the board, and there's a whole technique based on your body and length of the board and how tight the board is, the fulcrum, all that kind of stuff. When you're practicing it on a regular basis and you're familiar with all the physical effects. I was always a little nervous every time I stepped on the board, but I had lost the whole so I get for my clients who haven't done a push-up or ridden a bike for 3 miles plus or whatever for a while, they're kind of bringing to the table this combined, I don't want to call it shame, but maybe uneasiness. Like I used to be able to, like I hear a lot of that, right? Not as much now that I'm attracting much older clients. Like Like, we know we haven't done stuff. It's like, I come from, just assume I can't do anything, right? There's a self-acceptance with a lot of folks in my age range where in the mid-30s to about late 40s, it's like, oh, I used to be able to, and it's like, you just have to appreciate that for what it was, and then just the more you can come open-minded to it, if you've chosen the right trainer. And part of the reason we're doing this is we want the trainers to find the people that are right for them and that they're right for, right? So I'm not the best trainer in the world. I'm the best trainer for my clients. I could maybe help you out with one of your clients here and there, but you are the best trainer for your, regardless of our respective hours logged in. So, but anyway, it can be very intimidating. The whole idea of just like, I don't know, hopping up on a couple of skis behind a boat, or, just even throwing a frisbee in a park with somebody, kind of thing. And one of the things that I think is the most important unspoken thing that we need to do, and coming to this late, I was in corporate finance, high-tech corporate finance, as you remember, for my tirade work. I don't say hated it, but I did. Every single day of training has been monumentally better than my best day in corporate finance, just because, and we've talked about this before, just to have that level of engagement and direct contact and connection, with people. But one of our jobs, one of our kind of unspoken jobs, is to demystify that which feels off-putting, intimidating, overwhelming, too complicated, too ambitious. Because there are so many different things we can do in so many different ways that whole, like, assembling that toolbox, it only has one purpose. How can I help? Right? In this moment, how can I help? And then once you've worked with a client for a while, then you've got more context, right? Then okay, this is their trajectory, this is where they came from, this is where they want to go to. And then, now you've done 10, 15 sessions and you have a really good sense of their rhythm, your communication, all that. But really, ultimately, it's always back to that. How can I help most in this moment?
I really liked your use of the phrase leap of faith, because as you're describing this moment, this apprehension that people come into, it really is an appropriate heaviness, is appropriate weight to that phrase that applies to people coming in and they don't know anything about us, they're they might get a little bit from the internet, they might see our videos and say, oh, this person, I kind of like their vibe or whatever, but it's scary. It's scary. It's a scary thing. And I feel like that's something that not all trainers, I would say, at least in my short experience, very few trainers really are aware of and actively, actively pursuing that trust. I feel like a lot of trainers have maybe a subconscious, realization of it, but they're not so much actively thinking, oh, this is a scary thing. At least, the stereotypical big box trainer who's walking around the gym, a lot of times, they look really good, and they want to, we have, and again, as trainers, not again, but we have, as trainers, especially young trainers, we have this idea that we're supposed to be this apex of what is desirable to be, and that's the only way we're going to find clients. And one of the really important things that I've learned in my time, in my few years doing this, has been almost the opposite of that kind of concept, right? Which is, I am far from the perfect physical specimen. I'm far from this, idealized you know, big Mr. Muscles, right?
Right.
But I've found that realistically, that's how we all kind of feel anyway, right? Everybody,
Exactly.
you know, there's this dynamic between potential clients and trainers where, you know, the trainer wants to be, you know, show you all that they can do by being an example of that. But realistically, and the client wants to automatically, you know, I want to start paying for sessions, and then on Tuesday I want to look like that and feel like that, right?
Right.
But the reality is both of us are coming from a place where really I want you to trust me and be comfortable with me and like me. You know, the like is a little more of a personal thing, but I want you to.
It speaks to the rapport, though. That's important.
Right. I want you to come and want to come spend time with me, because if you don't like me, well, I mean, and if we don't like each other, I mean, granted, you can have a career's worth of working with somebody that you don't like and doesn't like you if you have that mutual respect and trust, right?
Sure.
But I think that concept of we're both people coming to this with people insecurities and people, you know, when I come into a session, I think, oh, you know, I have this feeling of, oh, I'm not as lean as I want to be, or as lean as you know, they're going to expect me to be, right? You know, I'm going to be too cheerful or something, you know, whatever it might be. And, you know,
they say woo or
right,
one more rep enough times. Right?
Exactly. Right. Well, but the client is coming with that same kind of leap of faith that we're talking about. And if anything, the client's in a more vulnerable position because we're the ones coming with the knowledge and the instruction and kind of the direction and guidance. Right.
Right.
So it's interesting to me. It's been interesting to me in my time doing this that is so much more important of a thing to build in the first few sessions, as opposed to getting somebody to have that workout. You know what I mean? Like that first session. And I remember you telling me this. It's like that first session is not about getting them the best workout. That first session is about getting to know each other. And
laying a foundation. Yeah.
Totally. And letting them start to see who you are so that they can begin to have that trust and know that, you know, because this isn't something that happens by Tuesday. This is something that takes months and sometimes longer and sometimes years.
And sometimes you get to that point at some future date and then they want something else or more or some offshoot of that. So that's an organic, continual process as well. It could be maintenance stage, but then exploring different aspects of maintenance too.
Totally. So, yeah. Well, that's interesting. I just had this kind of experience with one of my clients and friends, Amanda, who you know well. Yeah. It's been a lot of fun training her because we've been close friends for a really long time, and so we have a natural trust and rapport built in, and we're also very clear and kind of frank with each other, right? And because we have that foundation, and she's like that anyway. I'm like that anyway in my own ways. Right. You know what I mean? And
that's helpful. In that partnership. Oh
man, it's been so fun to, present her with these, foundational skills and philosophies. She takes them, she eats them up. She comes to the next session having applied those to this next workout, and it keeps me on my toes because I have to keep giving her new stuff, right?
Right.
And
it's great,
right? And I feel like, we've been training for I think about 3 months now or something. Might be about 3 months, and it wasn't until this last session that I feel like we both really found kind of that flow that we're really looking for, right? Like she's come and she's taken all the stuff on, and really physically and even I would say from the contextual standpoint of the workout. Emotionally, she's night and day. I mean, she's come so far. I've told her this, and makes me feel just wonderful.
Sure.
It makes me feel great with just any client to feel that way, but to see one of the, somebody I love and somebody I've known for so long really having that change has been amazing. But it was until this last one where she had told me before, it's like, let's do more core stuff. And I was like, all right. So I went out and I looked up some new core stuff that I haven't even really done much myself. I mean, it's been probably a couple years since I've really done like planks as part of my workout, right? Yeah. And all these variations of different core stuff. And this last session, we really kind of, I feel like, got her right where she wanted to be, right? Yeah. And it's a process, like we're talking about. I'm talking about this person that I've known my whole life, and that we already have that rapport that you need to build up with a client to begin with. And it still took us, 3 months to get to where we need to be, and that's with getting stuff done every time, which is not always the case with every client, trainer, relationship and time spent together, because naturally there's going to be days where you just don't feel like working out the same way, or the trainer's like, okay, this is what we're doing, you know what I mean? There's just days where it's like, it's not every day is perfect, right? Sure. But as we were talking about, we work our way to this place of trust, understanding, even a shorthand communication, right? I mean, we're and the fact that we tend to look at these things as A plus B equals C process, when really there's a whole range and multitude of variables in every single session, right? Mm-hmm. And range of variables in the process of getting to that point where really now I would say that I was a great trainer for her all the way through, but now we've gotten to the place where like I think that I am the right trainer for her, because now I know her body and I know her mind in this kind of setting, right? Because as long as we've known each other, we've never been workout buddies or anything, right? And so now, after me learning her and her learning me in this new way that we've never done, I really feel confident in saying like I am the best trainer for her now. That's great. Yeah. So I mean, it's a real pleasure to be able to work my way towards that, and it's a good lesson to learn for any I think any trainer period, but especially younger trainers, that we're even though we live in this like world of Instagram and Facebook, and we see all these results without the process, that everything really is a process. And I want to come back around to what you were talking about in terms of the question I asked you, but I just do want to say I just watched Tony Hawk a couple days ago, or like I saw the video a couple days ago, so maybe it was in this last week. Performed his last ever Ollie 540, which is basically on a half pipe. He spins one and a half times that 540. I think 360 540.
It would be.
I think it's like 1 3/4 turn.
It would be a 360 plus 180, right?
Yeah, so it's 1.5 turns, right. And it was great because they showed the video of him trying to do it, and we're used to seeing the video of like just him doing it, right?
The highlight reel.
Exactly, right? And we see all these, and they're awesome. These beautiful skate videos from especially from like my my teenage years and stuff. But they're lineups of these tricks getting accomplished with maybe a bail here, there, with the really gnarly ones, right?
Right.
But they just showed him what I assumed was from what was the first try, and it took him like probably almost 10 tries, and you could see him like
Right.
You could see him getting frustrated,
Sure.
and going through that process, which is, not specifically what we're talking about, but very much in that same ballpark, right?
Yeah.
Of like, this is a process, this
Right.
is a challenge, and it wouldn't be the return in self-efficacy and the return in actual ability wouldn't be there without this process
Right.
of trial and error and failure.
Right.
Which is funny because we talk about failure, but failure is success in our business, right? I mean, we're
not going to know where the growth point is until we know where the obstacle is, right?
Absolutely.
And what you described for me is a beautiful example of a misconception that a lot of newer trainers have, or even some more experienced trainers have. And it's easy to get into the mindset that we need to have to worry about what we show to the clients or the outside world, when really what we need to think about is how we show up, right? And the way that we show up that's helpful to them is open, curious, with compassion, patience, and a sincere desire to understand where they're coming from and how they're experiencing what you're doing together. Because, the tools and the techniques and all that stuff, you can accumulate that. And all trainers find their own mix of the things that they're drawn to based on their personality types, their interests, and the type of clients that they're working with. And that's all. I mean, as long as you have a modicum of, diligence about exposing yourself to, again, the guiding principle becomes, how can I help my people better, right? Not what's the cool new thing that is this worth investing in for my little studio or whatever.
Right.
And just have an appreciation for the fact that there's some common ground or compatible material that brings you together, but that there's undiscovered knowledge that's going to take you a while as the trainer to internalize and appreciate and get the full weight of. And it's always going to be a worthwhile investment because it's going to make you a better trainer, a better person, and it's going to directly help some future client or maybe even current clients that you have. But there's never a downside to coming into the process with more willingness to understand whatever their difficulties are, or areas that they're not as comfortable with, and a tendency to want to stay with things that are more comfortable, and handling that with, dignity and restraint and quiet, subtle patience, right? Sometimes as trainers we can get stuck on, well, I really want them to be able to, hold a side plank because, they've had problems with their low back, and I know if they can stabilize the spine, but okay, all right. So maybe they're struggling, and you can see their confidence and their enthusiasm about the process start to be worn down too much. There's a way to redirect that we as trainers need to be humble enough to say, okay, this is not the right thing for this process right now.
Right.
And when you move them to something that's easier for them, to tie back to some, maybe even in your process of becoming a trainer, where it's the right thing to do at that moment to give them something to do that's a win, that's a short-term win, that's a confidence builder, that has some value. But I mean, I do program outlines for every client almost every day on a little spiral notepad, right? But I'm always ready to rip it out, because you never know what's going on for that particular day. We need to put ourselves in the willingness to learn mindset to encourage that from them. And that's a really important way to both build the strength of the partnership and to become a better trainer. And it kind of liberates you from the whole, I need to look a certain way, or I need to have a master's in kinesiology. And
Totally.
yeah. And so to tie back to something you asked me, it was part of that question all the way back to, I have kind of, like, yeah, Bruce Lee was one, and not just because he looked cool and he did really cool things and everything, but I think which he did back then. He did, totally. But I think he's one of the few people a non-bodybuilder who's been on the cover of Muscle and Fitness, because he was such a great example of symmetry and balance. But anyway, I just love the way that he moved, the combination of grace and fluidity and power and speed and all that stuff. And plus, he was so focused. But more than that, exactly what we're talking about. He was an absolutely voracious student of anything of value, whether it was the martial arts world, nature, philosophy, just curious, just open and curious. Right, always questioning judgment and always refining, and his identity became inextricable from that learning, growing process.
It's so cool that you say that, because a story that I heard Bruce or Jackie Chan told, I saw him on something say, which applies to this, because you're kind of talking about this underlying kindness, really, right? Yeah, I mean, really, kindness is at the core of everything you just said, really. And kindness to your client, but kindness to yourself as well, and bringing that to the table so that it's a part of all the interactions, right?
Right.
There's this great bit with Jackie Chan talking about, he was one of the I don't know if they call it extras, but he was one of the people, like one of the henchmen or whatever in Enter the Dragon.
Okay.
And so he was there, and there was a scene where where Bruce Lee they were filming Jackie Chan getting hit by Bruce Lee, right. And Bruce Lee actually made contact. Or I think they were making light contact, but he actually got him on the chin or whatever. Yeah. And he said he immediately was like, "Oh, are you okay?" And went and kissed him on the cheek and was like, "You okay?" You know what I mean? Making sure that his guy was okay, right? And there's nobody at that point, right?
Except another human being.
Another human being, exactly, right? Yeah. So it's so cool to be talking about this, and really to see that through it. Even as somebody who probably has the best eye view into seeing your career from over a long period of time, to be able to step back and see that the core foundational philosophies, really to see them be you absorb them from places like this is so cool. Yeah. And I think you talk about Alexis Arguello, you talk about Bruce Lee. I mean, these guys were kind. They were decent human beings, and they brought that to their very physically combative, violent mediums.
Yeah, and that, to me, you bringing up that point, I guess the context of the intuitively sort of counter to kindness, it really makes it, I've always been drawn to, maybe not even necessarily the best fighters, but kind, self-aware, genuine, friendly, caring fighters. But I think that the root of kindness is self-awareness. And because we all want to be loved, we all want to connect, we all want to live a life of purpose, we all want to be of use. We all want to make our worlds a little bit better, however we can do that. But that self-awareness, rather than just like trying to study the client and knowing all like the best things to do with that client or whatever, but being aware of how you're showing up for that client and being comfortable with and open about your own vulnerabilities, uncertainties, learning process, all that stuff, that is the cradle for them to fully embrace the process and fully embrace that, because they're like, okay, here's this, they're doing this for a living, so I'm still learning, right? I'm still, and our field is rivals like Hollywood for body dysmorphia. Like we don't think we look good enough. Way worse than the rest of society.
Right.
Doesn't like
Right.
the degree to which we judge ourselves, maybe because we hold ourselves up as examples. But I think the instinct is right. Hold yourself up as an example of someone who is willing to learn and grow and be in the constant process of becoming more than they were before.
Right.
More available, kinder, a better example. It's fine to be stronger and more muscular, but you're not going to get younger. So, right? I mean, there's certain things that you just like, I'm not going to be 6'2", right? I'm not going to help get my hair back. So a big part of self-awareness is self-acceptance too. So all of those qualities, and I think to a greater degree with older clients and clients who are more focused on performance and capability as opposed to looking a certain way, you'll start to attract more of those types of clients who invest a deeper value in the process and the less tangible outcome, right? As opposed to, this is how much I could bench last month, and here, how much I can bench this month. And even if you just want to have a good career, you're going to attract the clients who are more committed long term, because it's a higher priority for them.
Right.
Right.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. Let's take a pause, because I'm about to burst at my seams.
And I'm hungry.
Are you? Perfect. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to just keep this all rolling, and we'll just edit out whatever. I think you pretty much answered that first question.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Try not to be so long-winded on the next one.
Please, let's fill up the time,
Don't have to ask me twice.
Okay, so I'm going to save these last couple for next time. Yeah, we'll make that our topic for the next time. But I'd love it if you could just tell me about starting your training business, when, where, why.
Sure.
I mean, you gave us the context of starting off in corporate finance,
right?
And kind of that, but you didn't really say much about that, except that you were in corporate finance and that you enjoyed training, so much more. But how'd you get from doing that, having that be your career, to really deciding this is what I want to do, and just give us a little bit about how that happened.
Sure. What was sort of a fluke that I ended up in corporate finance anyway. Just I grew up during the high-tech boom, and when I got out of high school, I went to San Jose State, and I thought I was going to be a commercial artist. I was interested in art, and then I just kind of then I also played music, so I thought, no, I'm going to be a full-time musician. Let's talk about how many dreams have been burst with that.
I know that game.
I don't have regrets. I did the bar band thing for a bit, but sort of part-time. But it took me 12 years to get the bachelor's in accounting, which I did mostly at night because I had started working basically an accounting clerk for a disk drive company. And it was great. I met some wonderful people, really smart people, and it's kind of the wild, wild west in terms of professional opportunity, and it's slowed down, but it's still one of the most sort of dynamic, fast-moving industries. So there was a lot that was engaging about it, but something in my heart just wasn't, really into it. So like it was with music and art before that. So when I've been doing it for about 13 years, and then your mom and I split, and then she and I both remarried, and we lived in the same town here, Pleasanton. It's kind of a turning point for me because then I had a sense that time is really shorter than we think, and planning way ahead is a little bit folly. I sort of need it as a young man, especially when you have a family and you're just kind of getting started in your career and all that stuff, and it's all that good stuff that really my parents' generation, that was the only track kind of thing, right? And then I'm now you guys are all gig economy and anything's possible, and you could, right, who knows? And so I'm sort of the bridge generation for that kind of thing. It's like, okay. So from my perspective, it was, sort of a new start personally, but I was a parent and there needed to be some stability. So every time I went back to school, so I would take a semester off here or even a year off here because of stuff that was going on at work in corporate finance and high tech. But I was working on my degree, and every time I went back, especially when I went back to San Jose State to finish the last year or so, I would take fitness and nutrition classes because those are the only classes that I was really interested in. And that I would take that weren't directly connected to, okay, this gets me to someplace I need to be professionally or whatever. And that feels different. There's a corollary with work. If you're doing work that you do well and you enjoy and you get a sense of satisfaction out of it, you don't think twice about over the weekend, that's fine, right? Especially if it brings you rewards that are stability, whatever it is, comfort, that's all important. But when you do something, whether it's a class or a club or a band or, social group or movie dates, that you just do because it's the highlight of your week or whatever, that's a really different feeling that unfortunately not enough people that have that as their chosen livelihood. And I didn't know. Honestly, I didn't know if I would be any good. I didn't know if I would dig it, but I just had a sense that it was worth a shot. So I kind of tried to combine the visions, and I decided to try it for a year. So I planned to, and it made sense to do it out of the garage because then I wasn't committing. Only thing that I owned the first year was a set of power blocks right over there that we still have, because those things will outlive you and me and your grandkids.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Set of power blocks, the bench that you're sitting on right now.
Nice.
And a hard rock bike that was propped up on a trainer to convert it into a stationary bike.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The yellow, it was real yellow.
Right. Yeah. So, and I got some floor mats and stuff. And,
so what, did you just have that on the Parabody? You got the Parabody.
Got the Parabody a few years later. Okay. Once I knew it was, this is gonna go on for a while. But I really looked at it as an experiment.
Right.
My degree was in accounting, and I had worked for big companies. But I thought, what a great experience to do a really simple structure, small business. And I made plans. We should probably have additional, podcasts specifically on that part of it, because I think that would be really useful to trainers or people considering becoming trainers, but don't quite know what business structure makes the most sense for them.
Totally.
The risk reward and
Absolutely.
the latitude and responsibility, all that kind of stuff. And that stuff has changed dramatically since the digital age, which was just after I got started. Most of my promotion was offline. But anyway, back to the decision. I figured I'll do it for a year. And my wife at the time, Tammy, she's pretty risk averse, very sensible, and it's kind of like coming out of left field. Poor thing here was a divorced dad and stable, and kind of did a bait and switch on her. It's like, how about if I do this for it? She's like, And then I kind of showed her, here are my, I planned what my revenue needed to be in the number of sessions that I needed to get to the point. And I had a year. I had some money from a 401k from a previous position. And anyway, so not to go into a lot of detail, but I had a nest egg. I don't recommend you start your own business as a trainer without some money set aside, or a full-time gig that you can scale back the hours incrementally.
Right.
So I just want to get that point in.
Which I want to do.
Yeah, we've talked about that, and you
we'll have
already
a whole episode about this.
Yeah, I mean, so because you have to protect yourself, and you have to, especially if you have family, you have obligations and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, so I was on pace to do that for the first few months, but I still was ready to walk away if I didn't get what I committed to Tammy was, I'll be paying the mortgage within a year, because that's the money I have to pay the mortgage until then from this chunk of cash I had. And I worked really hard, and I put some pressure on myself, but I didn't, because I was looking at it as an experiment. I knew if it didn't work, if I couldn't make a living beyond that, whatever the money ran out, it would be a great experience to have as an accountant, right? I had done it on a very small, simplistic scale, done my own business. I loved it. It was so cold out there, and had a couple of space heaters, and my clients, bless their hearts, like, oh, you could see the breath coming out, It was so cold, and then it was super hot in the summertime, and we got the fans going and spraying them with the misters. Bless their hearts, right? But I think the reason that they did was because, what we talked about earlier. We found each other. We were the right fits, and they completely trusted me, and I was so committed to being worthy of that trust, even when I didn't have a lot of experience at first. Right. And I train 2 clients now that I trained 20 years ago, 3 days a week each. So 6 hours of my 30 to 35 sessions a week are these 2 ladies, one of whom I trained almost continuously for 22 years. And another one, she had some life stuff happened in between, but we have a lot of the same friends. And when she was ready to go back to training, she called me first because of that rapport, because of that trust, because of that relationship that we built. So anyway, I was paying the mortgage in 8 months. Wow. So, but I've never made as much money as I could have if I'd stayed in corporate finance, but I don't have a heart attack or an estranged family or a sense of emptiness at almost 60. Right. Like, what did I do with my life? Right. I know I could die tomorrow, and it's like, it was great for me, and I helped how I could. Right. So it's funny because I've had conversations, you and I have had a couple of conversations about this, and I've had conversations with other trainers who are my peers, who have done it for 20 years plus, and we love what we could do. We love what we do, but we could walk away from it tomorrow. And I know that sounds a little counterintuitive, or it sounds conflicting, but there are elements to this kind of work, the connection, there's sort of a built-in incentive to continue to grow yourself and to do what you're asking your clients to do. So you really come from a place of credibility and
Right.
empathy. As long as my work had those aspects, I'm in. I mean, I love this,
Right.
but to be happy and satisfied with my work, those are the aspects that I need. And I'm spoiled. Like, I'm too old to do something that doesn't have that. Unless I just had to provide for my family.
Right.
So it was a good choice, but it was an experiment that, 22 years into it, it's going pretty well.
Yeah.
Which is good because there's no way corporate finance would take me back at this point.
Yeah, things have changed a little bit in 20 years. 2021 right now.
Right. Yep.
Wow. Can't believe we're about to be 20 years from 9/11. I remember getting a call from Grandma and going out into the garage, which was your studio, and handing you the phone on 9/11.
Right.
And I remember thinking, is Dad going to get drafted?
Wow. It's so funny the things that pop into your head, whatever your frame of reference is at a monumental
Yeah.
event like that.
Yeah, when it's crazy to me that, none of my siblings have any. Well, none of my younger siblings have any real concept of that, right? I mean, they were all
The pre-9/11 world?
Yeah, there was. Yeah, I mean, and just 9/11 in general, because it was just such a. It's a cliche. You hear. People say, "Oh, do you remember? Do you remember where you were when that happened?" And for everybody who lived through that consciously, was old enough to remember it. I mean, that really was everything changed, right? I mean,
Right.
the whole concept of national safety, and I think really that was the beginning of a new type of tribalism, right? That we started to see in
Right.
our country. That really, and we're seeing the repercussions of through this year, and we will continue to see repercussions of through years to come.
Yeah. And can I just interject something about tribalism? It's a really, I think that's a really valuable insight and point that you make. And ultimately, tribalism is rooted in defense and protection, right, of you and yours.
Right.
And there's a fitness tribe, right?
Right.
And it's all about elevation and inclusion and encouragement and all that, the good side of that mentality and that social construct. But ultimately, even that, it's all still about connection, right? It's I have been more deeply moved this year than at any point in my career when COVID hit, which, it's not like we can point to a country or a different religion.
Right.
They're the enemy. It's like this whole thing that's pervasive, and we're all in the same boat to different degrees, maybe, right?
Yeah.
I freaked out when I knew we were going to have to shut the studio down. Melissa too. So my wife is my business partner, and this is our livelihood. And she's got kids in college, and just like I do, and we within a week, with neither of us having any experience with Zoom, more than half of both of our businesses moved to Zoom, because that's our tribe.
Right.
They would have followed us in any way that we were accessible to them. So grateful. And when you talk about that time period of 9/11, and I may have cut you off before you got to the point about how there was a sense of community and shared suffering that came from different places around that time, and then happened within different groups that had been adversaries before. A willingness to consider stepping in and being helpful in some way, even if it's just even if it's not adding to the conflict or adding to the the mentality that makes somebody else not good enough or not part of your crew or whatever, anything that's connecting and uniting and is empowering in a positive way, that is a beautiful way to serve. If you can integrate that element into what you do on a daily basis, and can't think of any other fields that provide more of an opportunity for you to do that than what we've chosen.
So this is a great opportunity to say, again, this is Clayton Taylor and
Dan, right?
Yeah.
Dan Taylor? I think that's right?
Yeah. Clayton
Wait,
Taylor.
let me look at my license real quick.
This is Clayton Taylor and Dan Taylor of Tri-Valley Trainer in Pleasanton, California.
And Optwell50plus.com.
And Optwell50plus.com.
50PLUS.
Yeah. OPTWELL. No, wait, what is the
OPT, you're on the right track.
Yeah, okay.
OPTWELLNES. No, sorry.
Yeah, it's just off the well. Right?
Optwell. OPTWELL 50PLUS.com. And we have a Facebook page, and it's Optwell50, I think, for Instagram. And you kids with your newfangled digital stuff, I try to post on a pretty regular basis. Not really great about, but I try to do what Clay and I are talking about here, which is kind of find our people who we can help and try to be helpful.
Absolutely. So for now, the working title, we're going to call this Tailored Fitness for trainers, by trainers, but really for everybody.
Sure.
And so this is great because this conversation is exactly what we wanted to bring. It's just a little bit of us having conversations we would normally be having anyway, but sharing it with the community. And we hope that they're trainers, and we hope that this is helpful to anybody who's looking to create a lifestyle or business with wellness at the center of it. And that doesn't necessarily mean you're practicing or teaching wellness, but bringing wellness into whatever it is that you are doing.
Can I jump in one more? You just made me think of something. One of the things that can make this podcast more helpful to people who are not necessarily in the industry is if you are in the market for some sort of guided wellness, whether it's a personal trainer in your area or a group class, or gyms are more facilities, right? But some sort of even somebody's YouTube channel to follow or whatever. If what we say resonates with you, then you're armed with a little bit more useful criteria to find the right guide for you.
Absolutely. So on that note, we've got a couple more questions that we didn't get to today, which is actually cuts off great because pretty much my questions for you for next week to pick up right where we were kind of leaving off today.
Okay.
So we'll be back. Thanks for checking us out. Like us, follow us, whatever the thing is for whatever program
Shake
that you're on right now.
Shake your fist in objection to what we're saying. Any kind of attention, we welcome.
Perfect. Yeah, so we'll be back. Thanks for hanging out with us for an hour and...
Sometime. 45. An hour 40.
Hour 45. Not bad. All right. That's a great...
That included the potty break.
Yeah, I know. I'm already got to go again. I'm like...
Too much information.
Like I am ready to make it happen. So on that note... All right. Beautiful.
I love what we got. I had such a blast, Clayton. This was awesome.
Yeah.
So much fun.